Hello, welcome to Enlightning. It's so wonderful to have you here. I'm here. This is a very special guest with me today. This is Fuel Snobble, who's been in the Enlightning chat pretty much since the very beginning. And it's so cool to have you on as a guest. So this is Mårten Rånge. He's been a developer for many, many years at many companies, and he's going to teach us today about incident management. So Mårten, tell us more about yourself, please.
Oh, yeah. First, can you hear me? Is my first question.
I can hear you.
Yeah. I actually haven't heard that song you played the entirety before. For some reason, I guess I'm always late to a show. I'm here often, but I always miss the start, and I never heard it. But actually, that's really neat. I got this Super Nintendo feelings from it, which is good.
Yeah. Like nostalgic kind of video game vibes, yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. My brother made that song.
Yeah,
so he made it just for me for the
cool.
show.
I like it. You can give him. It's okay. Give him a Christmas present this year.
So. Oh, I am. I'm bringing him with me to India. We're gonna go to my friend's wedding, so I'll be spending Christmas in India with my brother, and New Year's too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So So some people know me here from chat as the Fuel Snobble, which I hope come across as friendly trolling, not obnoxious trolling. But I realize
just light trolling.
I mean, it's a difficult line to go, and it's easy to go into rant mode sometimes. But I intend it as friendly, but you don't know how it comes out. But that's my thinking. So but I like trolling your channel, so that's why I'm here. And, yes, go on.
You're a developer with many years of experience, but you don't actually work with cloud tech stuff and Kubernetes stuff like we talk about a lot on the show, right? So
everybody works with cloud these days, right? But I don't really work with Kubernetes. That is correct. So that is a little bit off brand for me. But you often touch, I mean, because it's cloud and because of clusters, you touch on subjects that I have been working with. And if you say clusters, then yes, I've been working with clusters, but maybe not Kubernetes clusters, but I'm working with what is called EMR clusters. I'm working with Kafka clusters, my heart, and, I will not have. And especially misbehaving Kafka clusters is what, when people talk Kafka clusters on the stream, I immediately go to that Christmas, kind of coming into this topic we're talking about here, incident management, right? When the cluster just decided, no, I'm gonna ruin your Christmas. That is my job in life. So I think I had the opportunity to experience, a lot of tech and a lot of things, and often when things stop working because I don't know, it seems that I have a tendency to come into a company after a party, and now I'm part of the cleanup crew. So everybody was excited and growing. And creating a lot of technical depth, and then then we need some cleaner. Oh, here's Mårten. He can probably do that. So I have a feeling that I've been in that position quite often, but that's my own fault, so to say. And I'm also decent at it, so I guess I kind of enjoy it also.
It sounds like you've developed a process around how to do it well, so I'm sure that's helpful. But before we dig into that, we wanted to bond a little bit about our mutual interest, or a passion for you, and something I've touched on, which is Truche tiles and shaders.
Truche, that's important.
Yeah. So Truche tiles, for people who don't know, it's a way to make a pattern that feels like it should have order to it, but it also has a random element. So you make a tile, and then randomly the tile is put into the grid, but it could be oriented one of all 4 different ways, and that part's random, but the tile is always the same. So my son and I hand drew some this has been a few months ago. My son is 23, so my son did this one. That's one tile that's been trucheed, and then I did this one. These hang on my refrigerator normally. I pulled them off for today.
So what I like about Truche tile is that it's often very hard to see the actual tile. And the brain, I think it's hard to see what is the tile you have been placing and rotating. So that makes them, I think, more fascinating,
Like if I could, so that would be like one tile that makes this page.
And then you rotate it and you get this.
Yeah.
Now I see it more clearly. Yeah, so that's cool. I think that's very cool. And and I'm kind of into this shader art stuff, you know, and I'm an artist. I'd like to call myself. So, and there it's very common to use Truchet tiles to create interesting patterns, you know, that are cheap to compute, and you know, and also shaders have a lot of these. They have a lot of restrictions. So computing state is quite hard. So often you have to sort of, you know, it's hard to do that. So Truchet tiles are great for that, because you rotate them and you get some interesting shapes. And but I think for me, you know, talking Truchet tiles the entire time now, the risk of that. But for me, one of the most fascinating one is the one on C64. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
I don't even know what C64 is.
That's a Commodore 64 computer
okay.
from 83-ish, you know. And you can write a program that is, you know, about this long on screen, a single line. And the Truchet tile is a line that goes 45 degrees that way and 45 degrees that way, and then you flip between them. And it creates a maze that just is amazing, sort of pun intended. Amazing. In the complexity it arises by just flipping a tile, you know, 180 degrees. It's just, I'm blown by that. I think that's great. And the program is so small. It's really fascinating. To me, at least, it's fascinating. But then you have to use these. But a technique I used about Truchet tiles is that you actually can, if you can switch tiles. So you can actually make a big tile, and then you can make smaller tiles, and you make sure that the smaller tiles ties into the big tiles as well. So there's multi-level Truchet tiles that I've been using. I can show you some links, because they can create even more interesting complexity. So you have a big tile, but you make sure that the ending point also touches the smaller tiles, and the small tiles can be 1/3 of the big tile. So and then you rotate them, and they offer simpler in shape, but you make sure that they hit. It's difficult to explain, but it's actually quite cool.
Yeah, that's. I wonder if we can come up with a link or something to see the actual visuals. But meanwhile,
I can fix this link. It's I think it's a little bit hard to share here, but I have a multi-level Truchet tile that you can look at.
Okay, I would love to see it. Yeah,
and I'm gonna say hi to, and I can find it.
So some folks in chat. Lisa's here as always. Thanks for being a regular, Lisa. Appreciate you. Diggs, hello, you're new. Hey, what's up, G? Nick, the first one. Hi. Nick is pleased I'm going to India. I am too.
I'm also always wondering where the second one is of the Nicks, you know.
Yes. And we have super excited. Thank you so much, Alon, for coming. Yeah. And Lisa's psyched about the Truchet tiles. Okay. So let's start talking about incident management, the reason we're all here. So you've gone on a little bit about what your experience is. You are going to teach us today a proven method, a proven process for responding to incidents. Is this a process you've come up with yourself because you've had so many incidents?
No, not really. No. I actually, so what happened was, so what is an incident? Maybe we can start a little bit there. And I'm sure there's a definition of incidents. But for me, an incident is, so normally when we work in a company and sort of, you know, we have a Jira board or a Trello board, I don't know what they call it, right? And we do things, and we take it direct into working, testing, done, you know, that kind of thing. That is the normal processes that we would like to be. But sometimes things happen that require kind of immediate attention. You know, you just cannot wait to the next planning session to see if you can do it, right? It's kind of like you have a patient that is bleeding out on the floor in front of you, and you know, you cannot really wait for next election to vote for a better president to fix the problem.
Yeah,
you know, you have to
very visceral. You have
to act on this now, otherwise this person is just fading away. And I think that is an incident in my head, so to say. And if you think about programming terms, as many of us are programmers, I think of like incidents are like we have a method called team processes or normal processes, but around it we have a try catch to catch the exception, and in the exception handler we have the incident management process. And I think so. It's something we do that we have to do, but we normally would like to do the normal team processes because they're less stressful. So, and I I didn't really come up with this thing myself, but I was, of course, involved in many incidents before. For me, it always was very stressful. And I had the kind of idea that I should avoid incidents because they are so stressful, but they just have to be stressful. It's part of the nature to be traumatic. Now, this presentation is called Trauma-Free Incident Management. And that is, I think, is my distinction. Yes, it's still going to be stressful, but hopefully not stressful so you almost break. You can't deal with it. But we want to remove the trauma of the incident. And the very word that we risk lose our viewers by just mentioning that word here is by introducing an incident management process. The process is a bad word for many developers, but the idea here is that we put a little bit of process into place that is easy to understand and easy to execute, but it gives you a little bit of structure. So when an incident happens to you, because it happens, instead of becoming inactive or too stressed or something like that, or irrational, you fall into action, kind of. And you start working the problem in a rational way, kind of. So that is a little bit thing, because I didn't have it before, but I think everybody has a process, and it usually sucks because you just, someone says the house is burning down, and you just do weird shit and not really thinking about it.
I can hear an echo. Do you have our stream open? Me? Oh, there we go. So Spirit says, I don't think there's such a thing as trauma-free incidents. Not that I've seen. Yes, very stressful and sometimes overly so. So that'll be interesting to see if we can convince Spirit that a trauma-free incident is possible. I no longer hear an echo, Mårten, just so you don't worry about it. Yeah. And they say we have to meet the SLA, but to me that means shouting loud afterwards. When it means service level agreement generally, right? I think I just learned that in a recent episode.
Yeah, I mean, but it also comes a little bit on what you're touching on here, right? In order to achieve, and I don't really know how we're going to flip into the thing here, but it's also, if you are in an organization where people like to point fingers and put blame on people, it's going to be very hard to get a trauma-free incident process into place. It's kind of unfortunately builds on trust,
cultural,
and assuming the best out of people. And if you are in an organization that maybe are more toxic, it's going to be hard, because people will rather want to hedge and protect themselves than. The point is to solve the incident as soon as possible, right? So, but I can tell you a little bit if you want. So for me, I was in this position where I felt a little bit that incidents are awful, right? That's kind of how I experienced incidents. I had really bad incidents. I'm looking back at them, and I felt that if I don't know, do you call it plastic gems? Things you put, metallic things that you used to put paper
clips.
Yes, you can't break them, right? Unless you bend them back and forth, and then you do a kind of a plastic deformation, because each time you bend it, it doesn't go back the way, and you introduce stresses into the metal. And I kind of feel that is what was happening to me. I was bending a little bit too much each time of this incident, and I felt if this is going to continue, I'm just going to break at some point. So that was not a very good thing, right? And so that's kind of feeling like I had an incident that I felt, this might shorten my life by 6 months or something like that, because it was so stressful. And I don't want to have that again, because it's not good for me and anyone else. And you can also have this feeling of, it's all up to me. Everybody's looking, shouting at me, and you feel all alone, and you feel this heart-wrenching stress. And I know for sure when I'm too stressed, I can hit a limit where I no longer act. I become passive. It's just too much. I get the brain overload. And you read about these people in airplane accidents or kind of nature catastrophes where they become passive. They don't act, and you think they're stupid, but they're not stupid, because you can reach a point you just can't cope, and you don't act. You should act, but you don't, because you don't know what to do, right? And And then you can have the thing that you have the feeling, yeah, we never seem to get any better here. We always have the same firefighting drill every day.
Yeah.
And that's just bad feeling. So what I believe now, because I was at that space, is that there is a different way. There is a way to sort of say that it can actually, an incident can actually be a learning experience, something to learn about our system. So, you know, you drive a car, your Tesla car, or you're having a system, everything seems perfect. It's sort of, you know, sort of an opaque, you know, it is perfect system. But then suddenly something breaks down. And you have the idea that when you look at the architectural map of the system, that system A never talks to system B. But in the incident, shows you that system A and system B actually talks to each other, because the architectural map, it doesn't show you the reality. You thought it was reality, but it's not. The incident shows you that. It puts a strong light, an X-ray, through your architecture, showing you this thing sucks here, and you wasn't aware of that. And then they go, yeah, we did that fix for the customer. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can learn something about your system in the incident. Don't let the good incident go to waste. It's kind of the same.
I love that. Yeah. Feedback is a gift, even negative feedback. We have a couple comments, and then I'm going to go we certainly try to turn it around and calm it down somehow, but it can get out of hand depending upon the situation. So have some hope. And Nick, the first one says, also, I do not think that trauma-free means no consequences, which is a great point. Trauma-free doesn't mean easy necessarily.
No.
And so while I move behind the light board, I would love to hear, like, I think it'd be fun to hear like a specific story of something that went wrong from you, Mårten, but also from the chat. Like, what are some bad things, like some specific, since I'm so new to tech, I really like concrete examples of things that I can hold and understand. So I would love to hear examples of incidents y'all have had to deal with before. And also maybe like, what process did you use? Did you have a process in place? How did the incident make you feel? Does it make you feel as stressed as Mårten, where you might break in half? So I would love to hear all of those things, please. And I'm going to start moving over to behind the light board.
Yeah, so I suppose I'll start telling a little bit about. So I have two stories actually, and one of the stories is, we can take that one now, is a bad one, and then the later one when I learned a little bit. So many years ago, I was working at a company that was sending out invoices for telecom customers. Okay. And we were switching systems for some reason. We were switching the billing system, and it was a risky operation. But what happened that one? We had a test system that I was running everything on, and I have been executing this thing over and over again, and I felt, yeah, this is going to work. But then when we started to execute this thing over the real database, and these processes took days to execute, right? So after one day, I'm checking what is happening, and I'm starting to see weird stuff in the numbers, things that don't look right. And invoices, people appreciate if the invoice is correct, so to say.
Yes, I
and
certainly
the
do.
And I couldn't understand it. You know, I have tested it 1 billion times, and this was, of course, a very serious incident, so to say. But I didn't have that sort of process. I didn't have that mental process or the surrounding thing. So I took everything upon myself to fix this. And I didn't really get any help. I don't really think I can blame people, because I didn't really know how to ask for help. But I was in this extremely stressful environment for 1 week, where I had to figure out what was the problem, because it was working perfectly on the system. But since we polluted the invoice data with wrong numbers, I also had to remove it, which was also a risk operation, and then re-import it after I fixed the problem. And if we missed the invoice deadline, because these were before electronic invoices, so we printed all these invoice presses. We had a time slot booked, so we have to put all invoices in to that time slot, so they can print all invoices and send it out. If I don't hit that date, we still have to pay our invoices for these things, and we might end up bankrupt if we don't do that. And people might lose jobs because of this.
Yeah.
not just me, of course, but everybody else can lose their job. So that felt kind of bad. And I couldn't sleep for an entire week. I was thinking about this constantly. I was feeling very alone. People was just more or less telling me we need to fix this. So to say. And it was just awful. And I think I probably will live a few years shorter because of that story.
One thing that story teaches me that I didn't realize before is that an incident can last over several days. Or like months, I was I was expecting like more of like a fire or something like, it's a alarms going off, emergency. But I didn't realize how long term it could be.
In this case, to give you the wrapping up, we actually succeeded and we hit the date as well, right? So I succeeded, but I still think I took damage, so to say. And there was no process to learn from this. This was just like a pat on the back and good work, right?
Yeah.
And the next day, back to it. In the end, I was laid off from this company, by the way. So.
And then laid off. Oh.
Yeah, a few months later.
a net negative working with that particular company.
Yeah, it was a crazy company. So I had a lot of good stories, but this was a bad incident, and it was a bad way of dealing with it. Happily enough, we succeeded, or I succeeded, maybe I can say, in this case.
So one thing I put into the chat is the LID template, which living incident document is what you taught me that is. Is that a good place to start in terms of explaining, in terms of what to draw here on the whiteboard?
I think it's I have a little bit I want to bring up, maybe give a little bit context on where I learned a little bit about, if that makes sense to you, about better incident management, right? Because I was having this idea, this incident management has to suck. It's kind of fundamental law. But then a few years ago, I joined a company in Scandinavia called Schibsted. And I joined a team in that company called Pulse. This doesn't say you anything, but it was a big, this Schibsted company owns like 50% of all major newspapers in Sweden and Norway. So it's, I don't know what you call this in English, but it's like they own a lot of newspapers. In addition, they all own the biggest marketplaces, like
monopoly, right?
Like eBay thingy, but local here, right?
Oh, okay,
And they own a bunch of other assets, And what they want to know is how are people using their system? And many people use Google Analytics, but they also had a product called Pulse, which was another system here that also tracks user behavior. And I was hired by that team. I knew nothing about big data, but this was a big data for us compared to Facebook, not big data, but compared to many others. So we received maybe 5 terabytes of data per day. We wrote 15 terabytes of data per day. We had a data lake of roughly 1 petabyte of JSON documents. And so I was hired into this process, into this company as knowing nothing, because I came from embedded. So I switched careers many times because I used to think, I can probably do that.
I can relate,
and so I was hired with that. And what happened was after a year, all the senior people kind of left. And since I was the oldest person left in the team, I was then the senior developer, having just 1 year of experience in this thing. And because this is a central asset inside Pulse, Schibsted, a lot of things happens with that. And but then things goes down. It's people notice that very quickly. They notice it extremely quickly, and it's quite bad. And what also can happen here, which is GDPR happened in Europe, right? So privacy is, it should always be, but now it's more of people consider it. So there can also be privacy incidents. So not only us making a problem. I made mistakes, but if one of our users does us, that has happened, right? So we received 50 terabytes of data a day, right? But we couldn't deal with that because it was 10 times more than we used to do. It wasn't our fault, but we had to deal with it. And sometimes people sent us private information misclassified, and then we had to deal with it. So I was involved in many incidents, and involved in many stakeholders. And some of them was really serious, and some of them were not a series. So it was a huge work, but I was involved in so many. So I think in the end I became pretty good at incident management.
Okay.
And this company had, and this is what I'm trying to get to, long winded way, had a process called IMAS, which was incident management at Schibsted. And that is what I want to talk a little bit about.
Okay, so this process you're teaching us has a name.
Yes, IMAS.
IMAS.
Incident management at Schibsted.
Incident management, what are the second two words?
At HE. And Schibsted. It's hard to spell because you don't know it.
Oh, it's at a specific company that you were working at. Oh, okay, got you. Okay, then I'm not going to write it down. I thought it was more of like a standardized thing across the industry.
Yes, the name, so to say.
Okay, so this is you're going to teach. Great.
So I was taught this process, right? And that is what I want to talk about. Now we're coming to what I try to say. So the incident management process is sort of help us as a team resolve an incident as quickly as possible without traumatizing ourselves, so to say.
Yeah.
And now we're coming to what you described as a live incident document. I think at the heart of this process is what's called a live incident document, which is essentially a Google Docs that you have.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be Google Docs, and I don't think this process is tool dependent, but the tools should have certain attributes that I think is important. And one important attribute with the LID is that it's a real-time document where people can work on collaboratively and work together, and easy to change. You don't want any friction when you're working with the incident. Check out document and what. I don't know how you can manage, but it should be quick and simple to do that. It doesn't have to follow a certain structure so much. That's not important, but it's important you get the information in and people can read. And why would you have this incident? Well, lead document. So a very important thing that can happen in incident is you have a Slack channel with an incident, and you start working the problem, and then your manager comes into in the incident. In Slack channel says, "I am your manager. I demand to know what's going on." And you explain to your manager what's going on, and then managers comes in and say, "I'm your manager's boss. I need to know what's going on," and then explain it. You're not working on the problem. You're explaining what you think is the problem. And then the side boss to that manager shows up and says, "I have got no information. What's going on here? Tell me." And you're just explaining the same thing over and over again without working the problem. So the point of the LID is to give you a live update of what's going on and what we think is the problem and what we're doing to fix it and what the different people involved in it are doing and what the roles are. So, and you're maintaining this thing in order to sort of get less stupid questions in the channel. If you don't maintain it, people will have to ask. So you maintain it for your own sake. And now if your manager show up in the channel, they shouldn't even ask the question. They should know that the live incident document is the place. And if they ask, you can just say, there's a link at the top of the Slack channel, read it.
I love it. It's not unlike wedding photography.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, this is the source of truth. The parents of the bride, parents of the groom, any interested party, here it is. It's yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine photography could be kind of like an incident,
Every wedding,
But you have to coordinate a lot of things, you might be kind of like a project manager or project lead for that thing.
I actually have a conference talk about how it's similar, how wedding photography is similar to leading a software project.
I think so too, probably.
Yeah.
But here comes to what I want to bring up, that there are in this process, apart from the lead, right, there are 3 roles that are important. And the first role is the incident commander, which is in a wedding, it might be the photographer, right? It's kind of like the project leader. So
before you move on to the roles, can I just restate what you taught us about the living incident document? Make sure I have it right. So the live incident document is this acronym LID, and I put a link in the chat to an example of one. It's a real-time document that's collaborative, and it's a single source of truth. and a live update of what's going on. And the big benefit of this is that it avoids you having to repeat updates to all the different stakeholders regarding this. So you're saving your own time.
And there's also secondary benefits in that this will also form the ground for incident review when you are then trying to learn from it. So you put things into this document and then you look through it and say, this system had this problem. Let's do something about it. And it can also be another secondary benefit is this thing. Sometimes you're kicking yourself. Why did we make this stupid mistake? But if the live incident document contains your thinking process at the time, you might be able to go through and see, at this time, we didn't know that this was a huge, that we were about to screw up enormously. We thought this was a good idea. These 3 people agreed with me that this was a good idea. And we went for it. It was a bad idea. But at that point, we didn't know.
Yeah. So it covers your butt.
Sorry?
A little bit. It covers your butt a little bit. It mitigates.
Or you're like, you're kicking yourself, right? Because you know, because one of the worst feelings you can do in an incident, if you have like a severity 1 to severity 3, severity 1 is like company threatening. If you don't fix this, the company is going to go bust. And severity 3 is, this is good to fix, but can wait till Monday, right? One of the worst things you can do when you're doing incident is going from severity 2 to severity 1. So you have a severity which feels important, and then you and now
make it worse.
It's really important, and you go like, why couldn't I just stayed out of this thing, this kind of thing to sort of remind you, we thought it was a good idea, but
Okay, thank you for talking that through with me. And so now we're going to talk about the roles, the different people involved in the incident management. So you said an incident commander.
Yes, an incident commander, I would say, is the person that is kind of the project leader person. But it's also the person in charge. If you want to think about a fire happening, right? You have like a fire chief. I don't know what they're called, but there is a person in charge of that situation, right? That everything, that makes the shots. If you have to make some difficult decision, that person makes the shot. And the incident commander is kind of that person that sort of make the shots and sort of, and also make sure that we're focusing on mitigating the incident. So the purpose of this process is not to gold plate the solution. The purpose of this process is to make sure we get out of the criticality. The patient is bleeding out. Let's stop the bleeding so they can survive in the ambulance to the hospital. We want to get the patient stable enough to that state, but we're not going to fix it completely. We're just going to find it. So, and in our way, we're just going to fix the incident so it becomes, we can solve it during our normal team processes. We get out of this critical state and we get back to like, we can prioritize this ticket and we can discuss it if we want to do it and so on and so forth. And the incident commander has to maintain the focus on that thing. Because when people are working a problem, it's very easy that people get, I want to gold plate this solution. No, we're not going for that. We're going for the fastest way that is the least risk in it to get out of criticality. Gold plating comes afterwards, that you can do later. Then, but I want to just close off this incident and make sure we get out the criticality. So that you are kind of like a project manager here in that sense, like you are focusing the team that is working on this on getting it done. And you can also talk to stakeholders because people will, come in and ask what's going on, right? They should read the lid, but you might need to talk to people about solutions. Like, we are proposing to do this. How will that impact you? If you're having a multi-team incident, right? So that also falls a little bit under incident commander. So it is a quite demanding role in this process, but that is kind of the nature of it, I think, so to say.
So focused on, well, first of all, Nick, the first one has a comment that feels really risky. It feels like you're tempting fate. Nick says, I think I've never had a big incident happen to me or the company I work for.
I can make it
knock on wood. Yeah. When you do, be sure to report back, Nick.
Is that the page you here? Like, go up?
So the incident commander is focused on mitigation and focused on communicating with stakeholders.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything else I should? And they're in charge. Is there anything else I should capture here?
The most important thing of everything. The incident commander is like making sure that the lead stays up to date. You know, it's not the only person. Kind of like a section. This is the current state, right? And you know, you update that thing to make sure that people don't ask the team stupid questions.
Oh, to clear the path for them to focus on what they need to work on.
Making sure everybody works the most efficient on the problem. Now, so depending on the size of the incident, right? The incident commander can be, you know, a huge deal, or not at all. You know, if it's little criticality and it's kind of small incident, but you still want to run it, right? But very often, if you run into this thing, there it's if you have this incident now, you're thinking, boy, this is going off, right? Then what you do is you try to you cannot do the problem solving and the incident management, the incident commander stuff at the same time. It's just too much person. So the second role in here is what is called operational lead. And if there's a small incident or a very capable incident commander, the operational lead is not specified, and then it's the same person. But for many of my more complex incidents, I had said to like a friend called Carlos, right? Carlos, this shit is happening. I take the incident commander role. Carlos, can you help me with the operational lead? And then you and what the operational lead does is like, you know, reading logs, coming up with hypotheses, trying out things, talking to team members, trying to get a patch into production, sort of, you know, actually doing the physical actions, so to say, to sort of do that. But that person can focus on that more because the incident commander is doing all this junk around it, you know. So this person can just have a laser focus on finding a mitigation, not gold plating it, but finding a mitigation. And of course, the incident commander and the operation lead typically work very close together. You know, you are a team here. So, but if there is a difference in opinion on how to do it, according to the process, the incident commander says, yes, I hear what you say. You have a different opinion than I have. Someone has to make a decision, and this is my decision. So it's a little bit like that can be hard to swallow for some people, but that is how it's intended. At the end, some decision has to be made. It might be a bad one, but you need to do something. And the incident commander is kind of, you know, you obviously don't want to cause more problems, but if you have to make a choice, someone has to find a word sometimes.
Okay, I want to address a couple things from the chat and then ask you a couple clarifying questions. Oh, see, Nick, the first one, you're really tempting fate. You say, well, I may be going into one in the coming months as we're doing the biggest software upgrade in years. So I'll let you know how I may have lost your job. Hopefully your job's not at stake, but maybe you can use some of these techniques you're learning about right now. Fispheric says, I had a lot of Sev 3, 2, and 1, and the odd Sev 0. So are the severity levels, are those standardized?
No, I don't think so. You define them kind of a part of the incident process, saying, you know, maybe Sev 0 is the most important one. And, you know, or you call it A, B, and C. Depends.
Okay, but I learned from just context listening to you talk that the lower the number, the higher the severity, which is maybe counterintuitive. But so Fispheric had a lot of these incidents on daily, weekly, and monthly basis, and some 1 or 2 classes classified as Sev 1s. So it sounds like you have a lot of experience with incidents too. Do you have a process, Fispheric, for when incidents come up for you? All right, so we have our operation lead, which is focused on logic and actions. You briefly and quickly rattled off some things they might be doing. Will you say those again? Because I thought they would be interesting to capture.
You might be this person like be checking logs, you know, logging cluster, you know, pulling in more people, but kind of like from the team. Because it might be too much for operation lead as well. If there's a big incident, that's not enough. So you say that person might pull in more people working on the problem, sort of say it, right? But it's focusing more on the purely technical case, right? And trying to find and mitigation as quickly as possible. And close working together with the incident commander, right? And Carlos and we had a lot of trust in each other, so I trusted his judgments, and we were a great team. And that is also something that can go.
So the incident commander is more about communication, and then the operation lead is the one more thinking about designing a solution for the problem, or thinking about the solution.
Yes.
Okay.
Project leading is the incident commander, kind of like managing a crazy project, that is where the decisions, like a really project taken up to 11, right? So to say, with things that can change every minute. No, let's do it this way. Let's do it this way, and so on and so forth.
I'm going to ask about an uninteresting question to chat, but when I use the blue and the pink, can you read what I'm writing, chat, everybody, or should I just stick with
that? I have a good screen.
Yeah, and then Spiceric has more details, although they're technical enough that I don't know that I understand. But SEV-1, yes, MIM, incident management. Yeah, I don't know any of these acronyms. SDM, CDM, client service management, and lots of different teams.
But this sounds like some kind of
wow. Yeah, this sounds huge. So I see why you have some trauma.
Yeah, but
so we have
sense to you, Whitney?
What's that?
Does this make sense to you so far?
So far, yes. Does it make sense to everyone in chat? We have incident commander in charge, like a project manager. We'll write that down. And they deal more with communication. So they're focused on mitigation, communicating with stakeholders, making sure this live incident document stays up to date.
Yes.
And if it's a big incident in a big company or a big company, they probably can't do the logic part. And so therefore we have an operation lead who is concerned with the logic. They're focused on logic and actions, designing a solution, and they might be pulling in more people or checking logs. Yeah, that's what I have so far.
Yeah, sounds reasonable to me, right? Sounds like that. And of course, even if Shifted was kind of a big company, sometimes if the instance was small and uncomplicated and not so stressful, I did it myself, if I was the incident commander. And obviously, it's not just the incident commander that updates the lid, but it's kind of your responsibility to make sure it's up to date, because people might be super busy. But if what everybody should do is, like, if they spot an improvement, they put it into the lid. This is a possible improvement for the future that we want to do. I can't do it right now, but I want to put it down. Yeah. This thing sucks. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
And then the third role here is, which I thankfully never had to use, is communication lead.
Okay.
And that is when you have to bring in a competency that most people don't have, that are techs people, and that is how to talk to press, how to talk to the board of directors, how to talk to the legal, the law, police, perhaps, right?
So I have a question based on that description. Is the communication lead meant to communicate externally?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
And I'm a little bit fussy on this role because I thankfully never needed that role, so I don't have it. We were close once, so to say. We were close to think, but it turned out not to be worst case scenario. But it's like you have to write a press statement telling to the world, yeah, we are a big company and we screwed up. We need all your customer information, right? That kind of thing I shouldn't write, because panic move and stock market going to go down, and because I'm going to tell it in a way that is not very have the right words, so to say, for that thing. So I would say yes, external communication, seldomly used by me, at least, thankfully.
So media, lawyers. Has anyone had to deal with this level of incident problem? And then you said a third one, maybe executives?
Yeah, executive board of directors and things like that.
Board of directors, yeah.
What can happen at Schibsted, for example, if you have a lot of media sites, is that the front page goes down. And that's if the front page goes down on the biggest newspaper in Norway, you're going to need to write something about that, because people are going to notice, right?
Yeah.
But if our backend service stops working for 1 hour, which is we're not going to receive any gold medals for that thing, right? Nobody's going to congratulate. The customer don't really notice it, So
I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
Is the incident commander talking directly to these people, or does all the communication go through the live incident document?
No, you don't really have time to sort of, do it formal. It's like you have this mess of people that are talking more or less directly, maybe through a Slack channel, or you set up this meeting room. You have a war room sometimes if it's, you need to coordinate things like that. So I like to have the Slack channel. Personally, I prefer to setting up a meeting, video meeting, because then you get natural documentation of the timeline, because people want to done. Much easier to reconstruct later. But sometimes it's more practical to sit and talk in person, right? But I prefer the Slack communication. But it's not like you communicate through lead, but it's like put this into lead, I put that into lead, do that and that. So the process is really sort of, it cannot get into the way. We cannot say we have to do it this structured way. No, the purpose is to solve the incident, put it mitigation as soon as possible. And if that means I bike over to my coworker and sit next to him or her, I'm going to do that, right? Because that's what needs to happen. So we just do whatever we need. But the live incident document we put into place to get calm and peace, so to say.
Yes.
Well, calm and peace.
And for these peak benefits. Yeah. So we have Nick says, yes, sounds good. That they'll report back. We already see similar positions in fire departments and general first responder situations. I'd be interested if you would expound on that, Nick, because I actually am not familiar. Like, I don't know anyone who works in the fire department or first responders. So I'd love to hear more details about what those parallels are. And I asked Vice Veric whether they had to deal with press. And so if any news press was involved, it would be past the appropriate team covering that info. Vice Veric, when you've had problems with incidents, did you have this live incident document? And then Vice Veric says they have on-call sessions, emails, etc. where the incident ticket is accessible by all teams. I guess you just answered my question. Involved to add their checks, identified areas of concern, and what they're proposing to fix and what was applied fix and any next steps. Are they updating the incident ticket in real time, or is that something that comes later? I do see a big advantage to having an incident commander who's keeping it all up to date and in real time, because it's really easy to forget the details of what's happening in the moment, even the next day. And capturing all the details to help make sure it doesn't repeat is great.
The incident ticket here sounds like the lead, kind of.
Yeah.
Right? But I think a very important property of the live incident document is it's easy to make changes to it. It's kind of free form. I don't want too much structure, but it should be something you just dump information in and let's sort it out later.
Yeah. And it sounds like the main difference between what you're describing and what Vice Veric's experience is that you have a human who's in charge of keeping it updated too.
Yeah, but everybody is, of course, encouraged and
also
to sort of fill in more information as it comes in and so on and so forth, right? But someone has to make sure that the status update is relevant information, what's going on. And the person that knows the best about that is the incident commander, because that's the project lead. That person knows what's going on, right? So to say. So, does this make sense? Just to check.
It makes sense to me. Yes.
And so now we assemble the team here. We have we assemble the team. We have a way of working. But a question is, how do you start an incident?
How do you start an incident?
Yes, how do you start an incident, right?
I thought an incident just starts itself and you hope it doesn't.
Yeah, but someone notices, right? But let's
okay.
Let's say, for example, I give you a personal incident of not very severe, but I was out biking. I received my first COVID shot, right? I was biking home. And I almost ran into a big black cable that fell down on a road. So I looked at the cable, it came from above, and I don't know, maybe this is electrical, maybe it's bad, I don't know. What should I do? This is an incident, right? What I do is I use the standard number to call the fire department. I have a way to sort of initiate an incident because I'm incompetent. I don't know how to deal with this. I shouldn't do this thing, right? So I call the fire department. There's a guy saying, we're dispatching a fire truck here, and we hang up. Then I started thinking, okay, what can I do here to sort of help out at least a little bit? Well, I cannot do anything really, but what I can do is stop other fellow bicyclists from running into it. So I stood by and said, hey, look out for this thing. You don't run into it. I don't know what it is. And people, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. Let's not do that.
Yes.
The truck came over. And the truck came over, and some guy came out and said, yeah, we're going to take over now. Don't worry about it. And I was relieved of that, right? I don't worry. So that is, I think what we need is something similar to kick off.
An initial response. Yeah.
Yes. Kind of a number or a Slack channel or something, a process that everybody in the company knows. Everybody, without exception, knows how to kick off. Because anyone can notice that the front page is down, you know. But you should be inactive. If you see something, if I see a fire, I should do something. But I'm in contact. So at least what I can do is reach out to someone. So there's need to be kind of a kickoff process into place. And automated, that's brilliant. But if it's not, a checklist is okay in my head. And one thing about an incident as well is there's always an incident commander. There's always an incident commander. So, so if you discover something, that's a scenario. When I discovered this cable, I was the incident commander for that situation. Even though I'm completely incompetent in this thing, right? But it's me, right? I am there because even though I'm not the best person, I'm at least aware of the problem.
Oh my God.
That is much better than having the knowledge but not being aware. And we should try to do something about it, you know, rational in the thing. If you can, send out an email to someone saying, we're looking at the problem, you know, and that's what you say. You're not really looking at the problem, but you sent out an email saying, we're looking at the problem. So there needs to be a kickoff process, and there needs to be you have an incident commander. But then you run into this interesting situation. So let's say you discover an incident here. You are then the incident commander. And I come in and say, yes, I know this system. How do we transfer the incident commander role from you to me in an unambiguous way? Because the worst thing that can happen is you think I take it over, and I think you're doing it, and we both go to bed, and it's not solved. So in this process, there's also a handoff process in how the commander is being handed off to the other person. So let's say you're the incident commander, but you don't feel comfortable here. So you're really happy when I say I can be that person. But then you tell me, great, Mårten, put your name in the live incident document. I go into the live incident document and put my name in there. And then I go back to you and say, I put my name in the live incident document. You go in there and check it, and you see my name there. And then you tell me, yes, you are now the incident commander. Now it should be pretty obvious to both of us that I took over the role from you. So we want to have a kind of handoff to make sure it's a person still working on it. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense. We have some chat I would like to get to.
Yes, a lot of chat. So I didn't really.
No, well, I've been asking. So I asked Nick about what they know about firefighters and their incident process. So Nick says they don't have direct knowledge, but as you may know, Greece has its fair share of forest fire incidents. So when these incidents were happening, and from social media and friends in the police department, I learned that every such incident, there's an incident commander that coordinates across all the teams. Cool. Then each individual team has its own commander, which coordinates with the chief commander. Wow.
Yes. I mean, if it's a really huge incident, you kind of need that, right? But
Will you tell me what the acronym MIM is, please, Vice Ferric?
So I think IM is, but I missed what it is. I can scroll.
I don't know. So different terminology, but MIM is like the central commander, supports team and hierarchical control of the team commander equivalents. So the difference is that the MIM supports can cover the lower severity issues. But then when it hits severity 1 or 0 or -1, I didn't even know there was a -1, then the main commander shift pattern and people will be designated.
Main incident manager.
Main incident manager. Thank you, Vicer. Thank you, both of you, Nick, also. So so what you're telling me, when an incident is noticed, there should be a kickoff process. The person who discovers it is the original incident commander, and then there needs to be clear communication about switching to the actual incident commander.
Yes.
Okay.
And automation is great if you can have it, but not necessary. At Schibsted, we had a telephone number we could call at 24 hours a day, and we had a special Slack channel we could message, and that person on the other end could always take over the incident commander role. Say they were always ready to say, "Do you want me to take this over?" And what they would do is just find a better person because they didn't know every system, obviously, but they knew how to find people. They were good at that. So that was a real relief, because it feels really bad when you don't know what to do.
Hi, Napalm. Thanks for coming. Glad you're here. Hey.
Hello there, Napalm. Yeah.
Napalm says hi to you too.
Do you have any questions to me while we're talking and come up or about this?
I feel good right now.
Yeah?
Yes.
You have to stop me if I start ranting too much.
Yeah. I won't be shy if I need clarification for sure.
So now we know how to start the incident, right? And we have a team that are working on mitigating it, right? And then we hit, hopefully, we hit mitigation at some time. So the incident commander declares this is mitigated. We then fall out of this crisis mode and go back to normal mode, normal team processes, doing things by tickets, right? And that is the time you call what is called the incident review, which is another very important thing. So I am of the opinion that each incident always has a review.
So this is all crisis mode on this side, and maybe we'll put
we can do it that way.
Okay, that feels cool. So crisis mode.
So it kind of flows from left to right or whatever you do it, right? So it's
and then what did you call this side? This after?
We can call it the incident review or aftermath or something like that. I don't know what it's called.
Aftermath. That sounds dramatic.
Yeah.
But now, cool. And then the live incident document is important for both sides.
Yes, it's kind of
Yeah, I like that. Cool.
And here we do the incident review. And the purpose of the incident review is a bunch of things, right? But one of the things we probably discovered, we want to make sure we don't waste this incident on we saw a bunch of things during this incident. We saw maybe health checks missing. We saw many things that made this incident an incident instead of just being not a problem. So we want to follow up on those things and discuss them. So we call the incident commander calls the incident review, a meeting where everybody involved is invited, and including stakeholders. And it's optional, right? But often people show up because if you have been in a really tight situation together, you are quite interested in what's going on, right? We call this thing, and then what I try to do is I try to reconstruct the timeline, and then go through the timeline that describes this is the cause, if I have been able to identify the cause.
When you say do you mean the incident manager?
Incident commander, yeah. Sorry, I often was the incident commander. So
that's why you're qualified to give us this talk right now. Yeah. Okay, so
the incident commander tried to reconstruct the timeline, right? Critical events that are happening, right? Maybe developer X committed a bad patch, or something like that, or a hacker initialized a DOS attack, something like that. And then you take all and try to bring in the critical events that happen, right? That people communicated, thinking process, and you go through all these events at the start of the review, so that people understand at the end. Hopefully, do you understand how we think it played out? And of course, there can be areas where you have to be honest and say we don't really know how this started because we haven't been able to do a proper cause analysis yet. We might never be able to answer that. People say yes, that makes sense, or people might say I have more information to add that information, right? And then you start discussing improvements. So there were a bunch of improvements identified. You talk to the people here. Should we do that? Does it make sense, right? What does it mean? And then this becomes not instant. They become normal tickets that you can prioritize in normal way. It might feel urgent because you knew now this actually caused the problem. We often talk about technical debt, that is kind of abstract. If what is debt and does technical debt cause problem? But here we have a weakness in the system that made our having to work our butts off for an entire night. We know this is a problem. We probably should fix it. It doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So do you identify the improvements? And you say, yeah, we're probably going to go ahead with them. The incident commander can say, for example, I'm going to create year tickets for these and put it on the right team, and go.
So the steps so far is the incident manager calls a review, and the incident manager tries to reconstruct the timeline, and together the team does their best to understand how it plays out.
Yes.
And then what? And
stakeholders, like the privacy officer might show up and scare everybody, like hands off. That's the most scary person you have in the team, in an organization, the privacy officer.
Yeah. Also stakeholders. And then, so identify improvements and create a strategy for implementing those improvements. Is that what's happening now?
Yeah, just tickets, right? If it's not too complicated, right? And they might feel, sometimes they feel, yeah, this is really urgent, we need to do it ASAP, or sometimes feels, yeah, it can, you do it. Or just writing documentation. That is also something that is often coming out of this. Like, yeah, I'm writing on-call documentation. If this happens again, this is what you do. So you can resolve the incident in just a few minutes instead of hours.
Write documentation.
On-call doc, I would call it.
Okay.
To help the on-call engineers.
And then Spheric has, we call them PTARS, post-technical and analysis review processes.
Yes.
Nice.
And then there's a thing we often, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, strategies to implement the improvements.
And you can also talk, pros, cons, and these kind of things, right? What can we live with this, or does it, or is the privacy officer make us all fired because if it happens again? Can we handle another one of these? Is it acceptable? You talk about that. But the prioritization is ultimately that might fall out of this team, right? But then there's another important thing which is seldom discussed, which I think is very important, and that is you try to praise people. You try to bring up people. This person did some real out-of-the-box thinking and found this issue, and we resolved it in just 2 hours instead of 2 days. Thank to this person for sort of coming in from vacation. I never want to call in someone from vacation, but for example, let someone say that, yeah, I just saw it and I want to help out. All right, you thank the person. Okay, you shouldn't need to, but great, you helped us. People you want to lift up, sort of, so people feel good about themselves, sort of, in order to just make this not just a negative thing, but also strengthening people, right? Or maybe your stakeholders were very rational. You work with stakeholders, they were very pragmatic. Sure, kill that service. We don't, we can live without that, and that, yes, you saved our butts by doing that call, because we didn't know how to do it, right? So you try to sort of make people feel, visible, seen, and good about themselves. Now, sometimes a contention point is, should you put the real names of people in the timeline, right? Let's say I made a mistake. Should I put Mårten in the timeline? And I was once told no, because we should have a blame-free environment. But that is the opposite of a blame-free environment, I think. In a blame-free environment, I can put my name in, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's also very important, because what happens is you create kind of a library of live incident documents, right? And in that library, you see, shit, this happened before, 3 months ago. And then it says developer X, developer Y, who did these things, right?
Yeah.
If it says the real Napalm did this stuff, he fixed it. Okay, I'm going to talk to him now. What did you do, right? Because you want to have this library of incident documents, and you want them to resolve incidents much quicker, and therefore you want the real names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they might have valuable information. If it happens again, you want to be able to know who it is and talk to them, but in a blame-free way.
Yes, but if anyone ever use this for like, yeah, we're going to lower your salary because you screwed up the time, well, then people are going to put developer X in, and we're going to ruin everything. So
yeah,
no, that's unacceptable.
That's the toxic environments you were talking about at the beginning. Napalm wants to point out that they never break things. none of us here do. We're all perfect.
But you might be the guy that fixed it. So that's equally important.
Oh yeah, so your name will still go in there. Viceric says, but the incident is then put into a pending fixed state with comments from the agreed upon responses that I talked about during this phase. So when you say
you've done a very good job here, drawing up this picture. I think this is brilliant. I'm gonna.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You gave me a tip at the beginning to put the live incident document in the middle, and it really worked out from there. Yeah. So that tip helped shape it. But
better than expected. Very good.
Yeah. So when Viceric, when you say it's put into the incident is put into a pending fixed state, I guess you were talking about like the library of LID documents. Like this would be in a pending fixed state in the catalog that you were just talking about.
The ticket, right? So the incident ticket is not. It's not fixed, right? We mitigate the incident. We are waiting for a proper fix, and then we're waiting for it. But I think if I understand it correctly, we're out of the criticality of it. We are like, we can solve it without working late nights, sort of.
Yeah. So
gone.
I would love to hear a brief example of what happens when you don't have this in place. Like what kind of mess? What's an example of a mess that you see? And this example could come from the chat too.
Yeah, I think it is like the incident I talked about. A single person gets responsibility of a company-threatening incident. No one helps out really. Everybody.
They're probably afraid to touch it because if their name's associated with it, then that might have bad.
And it's like it just feels awful for a person doing it, just feeling all this weight. I felt people are going to lose the job if they don't make this happen. I shouldn't be alone in that situation. You should have someone at least to sort of, can you bring in some more people? What do you need help with? Is there something we can do? Do you need someone to talk to? Sometimes when you have a difficult incident and you're trying to solve it, I had a few during nights sometimes, right? Around the 3 o'clock. And one of my teammates, and I was on on-call duty, right? And one of my teammates, he was a night owl for some reason. So he often was awake that time. So I saw he was green. So I said, shit, I have this incident. Can we have a chat? And he often just came and just talked, And he might not even help me. But it was just such a good feeling to just talk to someone.
Not be alone.
Are you going to do this thing? Yes, that sounds like a good idea. And you're at least two about that decision. So just that thing helps. When you are without an instant process, you might be this, awful singleton position. You feel the weight of the world upon you. And sometimes it's not that bad. Sometimes you need someone to come in and, but if this can be crashing for another week over the weekend. We don't care. I tell them they have to wait till 1 morning. It's okay. These kind of things can happen. Right?
It's good in life in general, and any kind of hardship. It's good to feel like we're not alone and have some validation that the actions we're choosing are good ones.
Yeah.
Viceric has an example for I think the pending fix states that maybe the living topics. So like that would be like a developers need to recode, like take time to test and develop and apply changes that need to go to production that will help make sure this incident doesn't happen again. And then Viceric is saying we're talking about assuming this is a OS code-based issue, but the same process for power outages, flooding on sites, health and safety incidents, all of which have their own procedures, but follow a similar structure for incident management and controls. Do you find chat in general, and I guess Mårten, you too, with all of the companies you've been at, do you find it's common for companies to have a culture, the blame-free culture, where everyone feels like they're working together?
I think it's becoming more common, and I think the good companies I've been working at are often quite good at telling that. And I'm at my current space, I'm really saying if you want to do this rational and quick, we need blame-free now, right? So, but it is certainly possible that certain companies can be very successful and have an extremely toxic culture where people are diminished. And that's possible, right? But I wouldn't want to work there. At least I wouldn't want to take responsibility for these kind of things because it would just be awful. But coming back to you, when I joined my new company, you said what's happening without the instant management process. When I joined my new company, there was no management process, but there were multiple incidents happening, and I'm just observing. So people were in this crisis mode, calling into meetings and working late nights. And we're not learning anything here, guys, is kind of what I noticed, right? We're having these incidents just repeating. The same people involving. We're not spreading this thing across people. We are not addressing this as a team. We are working kind of on heroes, individuals. So what I did at my company where I'm working now is I said, so I worked at Schibsted and now I switched to a company called Contracting. So I changed IMAS to IMAC, Instant Management at Contracting. And I basically copy-pasted the entire process. And instituted this process into this company. And this is one of the things I'm most proud about, what I've achieved here in this company. Cool. I have a friend called Osmond. He's the CTO, right? He said, I'm curious, but I'm not convinced, but let's see if it helps. Because he was a little bit concerned about the overhead of the documentation, for example. And I said, it's not that bad, and it's also helpful. But now he's swung around 180 degrees.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's a good
and
feeling.
He thinks this is a very important thing and he's been an instant commander multiple times. He's very good at being an instant commander, and he actually also kind of carbon copied the process for another complicated process we do occasionally that is not instant, but so he felt this way of working about it, to have a commander, to have like these things makes a lot of sense, and having a live instant document is not going to also make a lot of sense. So he actually carbon copied the entire process for that thing. So,
super cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I feel it's validated in that regard.
I have some answers to my question before about whether it's common for companies to have a blame-free culture where you can. And so Nick, the first one says companies sure try, but it's a difficult achievement. And Fiserv experiences that historically, no, their companies have not been good about being blame-free, but it's getting better over time. But there's still some which have not changed. So I guess the trick, says Fiserv, is to get them on side and get them involved early with their processes rather than impose the process.
So I felt the management at Schibsted overall were very good. So, and the CISO, the CIO for our department or whatever it's called. I have a difficulty with how it's structured, complicated, right?
Me too.
Big guy, so to say, right? He said, we need to have a blame-free environment, and the day we stop doing that, I'm out of this company.
Yeah.
I think that is, stake in ground. This is how we do it, right? We are blame-free. And as soon as this is falling apart, I don't want to work here. I don't.
Yeah. It's not worth my mental peace.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, I feel like we're kind of wrapping up soon. What I want to do is go through, I want to take, I want to do a recap, but instead of in the order that you gave it to me, I'm going to do it from a linear perspective, for left to right. I
have a suggestion as well. So see, and it kind of ties into what you want to do, but I think it's up to you what you want to do. I have a real incident.
A real incident. Okay.
A real life story from Schibsted that I cleared with the CTO that it is okay to tell people about.
Oh, fun. Okay.
And it is going in this linear fashion, but maybe it's up to you how you want to do it. But with this thing, I hope to illustrate how we use this process.
Okay. So do you want to tell us the incident and the chat and I can say how we think it should go, and then you can tell us how we did, or do you want to just go through it all on your own as a recap?
That's an interesting idea, but how Yeah, I'm just thinking how we should do it. It's interesting how to make it more interactive. Let me think here. Okay, but let me say, I ask you questions, what you can think maybe is the next step.
Okay, Okay, excellent.
And
I love
see
it.
how it plays out. Maybe it's a complete failure, and I never seen again in this chat because of that.
And if it's terrible, we'll make a live incident document about it, and we'll figure out how to improve.
Yes. So I was working at Chipsets, right? And I was at this Pulse product, and what we did, we received a lot of traffic. And if the point of the system is taking in traffic, distributing it. If you don't do that, it's not much point of it. So maintaining that, so making sure that traffic flows through the system is one of the most important properties we do.
Okay.
So what I was at that time, I was tasked with, a senior guy like me needs some simple tasks sometimes to feel that we are doing some work. So I was tasked with switching tags on our instances so we get better cost tracking. So you put the tag on and saying this is this service, and I can see in the cost tracking report which service costs the most money. And we waste a lot of money, by the way. I'm not going into that, but we knew how to spend money. So maybe waste is the wrong word, but it was expensive. So it was a good idea to track costs, because then we can optimize rationally. So my task was that I'm going to put tags, and one of the services I'm going to put a tag on was our front door service that received the traffic. But I was not concerned, because we've been doing patches to this before. Yes, it's a little bit scary, but we have health checks. We have the new cluster will start. If it goes green, it will take over. We've done this multiple times a day. There's no reason to expect this doesn't work. And I talked to Carlos, right, about this, and he jinxed everything by saying, "What's the worst that can happen?"
Just because like Nick the first one earlier saying.
In his story, right?
Yeah.
So what you do, there's no code change. You just change a label on the instance. But the way our deployment process worked is that we need to redeploy. But not worried. So what I did, I just thought this is, safe as it go. So, but still, I learned a little bit from my history. So I said to Carlos, let's do it after lunch. So everybody's ready. We don't want to go to lunch. If something happens, everybody's in the office. We're ready to go. So yeah, let's do it. And what happened immediately when the new cluster went up, it went green, the old cluster died, and the traffic disappeared. All metrics.
Oh no!
Everything was dead. So what do you think, if you talk about this process, what is a reasonable next step here?
So this is now we're doing our kickoff process.
Yes.
So this is interesting, because it's like the discoverer is the original incident commander. So I guess that's you who made the change. And then there needs to be clear communication if you're handing it off to someone else. I know from your stories that you have been the incident commander, but I don't know. And probably the incident commander is someone with knowledge in the particular domain where the incident is happening. I'm imagining.
So you would say that I'm probably the incident commander in this thing.
So you are the main incident commander.
Yes.
So you're the discoverer, and then you're also going to stay the incident commander. Well, then the first thing you need to do.
I know the system. It makes a lot of sense that I'm the incident commander. I would agree with that.
Okay.
But what would you say in our world? The severity 1 is the worst. Severity 2 is the second worst. Severity 3 is the third one. What would you say is the case?
This is the severity 1, I think. What do you think, Chat? You have no traffic, and you just said it's a major part of it's a really important part of your business.
Reasonable to think that, but there's actually much worse things that can happen. So so I classify that as severity 2, because we can have traffic for a while. If it's 1 week, that's not going to be bad, but a few hours. So
it's okay.
Immediately is if you leak data, if we send out personal data somewhere that we use, that's your severity 1, and calling the data officer and say, I'm ready to put in my resignation letter. No traffic, no problem. It's only cheaper that way. So you're right. Go.
You become the incident commander, and you spin up a live incident document. Would be the first step, right? Or first 2 steps.
Do I use an operation lead or not in this case?
I maybe don't have a good sense of the scale, for severity 2. I would love to hear from chat whether an operation lead But it seems like there are probably enough stakeholder involved, the whole team's back from lunch, that you're saying that that you probably want to focus on the communication and give the logic part to someone else.
Yes, and that's what I did.
Excellent. And Ficeveric says, remember, the end users would be affected and they'll call their help desk to raise the incident. Then if this is a singular user or multiple users, will determine the severity. Oh, interesting. So the incident commander or MIM will track the ticket and pull in the appropriate engineering teams.
But I think this is let's continue this road. I think this turns out pretty good so far. Okay, let's see. Yeah.
Napalm says, it's literally like if the tree is cut down and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. If a server is crashing but no one is using it, is there an issue?
The famous screen test. Let's turn it off. So, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
That is what happened. Severity 2, because we didn't leak data. And I needed help here because this is like 30 seconds into the incident. And I'm already being pinged by people telling me, are you aware that your service is down? So and I'm like, yes, I'm aware. So I'm feeling a little bit, I have a lot to deal with right now. And I haven't even started the incident. So I told Carlos, I said, yeah, the thing we said couldn't happen. It's not working. Carlos, can you be my operation lead? And, you know, he's been part of this many times. And he said, sure, I'm on it. You know, then we had a quick discussion, right? What is the goal here of the incident, right? If you go, like, what would you say we should do? What is our goal?
What is your goal? Well, to return the system to a steady state. But you said before, like, you're focused on, well, you as the commander in charge are focused on mitigation, but logic is operation lead is focused on logic. But I'd say to return the system to a steady
state. Is focused on mitigation.
Yeah.
So how will you mitigate this incident, do you think? You know, difficult questions, but it's an interesting exercise.
The question is, how would you mitigate? I would think that what you would want to do is return to the old steady state, as opposed to trying to make a new state with the tag that you were discussing earlier.
So we tried that, by the way. We tried, that is a thing you learn, by the way. We immediately reverted, you know, before that is kind of like built in, you know, you just revert, just see what happened, you know. Didn't work. So a big surprise, the cluster that worked before no longer works. So we were like, this is weird, right? But I had a discussion with Carlos saying, okay, Carlos, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I want traffic flowing. We want traffic flowing, not just I. We want traffic flowing through the system somehow. If it's you do in the world, I don't care. Just, you know, do what you can to make it work, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. And at that time, I did a kickoff of the incident. So I looked away for a while, and I used the sheepset automation to kick off the incident. And what the sheepset automation did, after I clicked through the wizard, is that it creates a live incident document, it creates a Slack channel, and invites me to Slack channel, and it announces it in the war room, telling everybody, Pulse is down. And that's a huge relief for me, because now people see that in the war room, Pulse is down, so I don't need to ping Mårten anymore about this, because he's well aware of this thing. And there's even a Slack channel I can join, and there's a lid I can read. And I updated the lid, and I just put in, we are aware of the problem, we're looking at it, right? I'm just trying to make sure, we are working, but it's weird, you know.
We have some comments from the chat. MIMs will also check for any scheduled changes previous night, or if agreed for that day, to see if anything in that area had been affected in the incident. So that would have the persons involved with that change. So in case that's relevant to what's happening. That's a great point.
You check what has happened with the system, right?
Yeah, what's been happening lately. And somebody just switched the load balancer off.
Yeah, we had another one of the incidents, but this wasn't a load balancing. That was another incident, much worse actually, because that was before the incident management process, and that was actually quite traumatic. But not about that this time.
And Ficeveric says, unless it was an unauthorized, unmanaged change, or even part of another incident being worked. So this is fascinating. Yeah.
So, but I talked to Carlos after that. I looked away for 5 minutes, and you know, I talked to Carlos. How's it going, Carlos? You know, I don't want to stress him, but you know, I'm an incident commander. I want to know what's going on. You know, need some help. I have some free time now that I got the thing started. And he said, well, we actually found a mitigation. you know. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. What did you do? Well, when we logged in, so this is Carlos, being an experienced guy. He said, well, the web server seems down. He logged into the machine, the cluster. Notice the web server is down. I wonder why. What happens if I start it? And what he expected was that the web server would start and then crash with the error that prevents it from starting. But it worked. So it just worked. But what it did when it launched this thing was that it started it, but then it crashed. And when we looked at the logs, it looked really weird logs. The logs didn't make a lot of sense. It was complaining about files missing. And now it worked. All new nodes, all new machines that were added, just crashed. But when logged into the machine, we then could start it manually. But this was a huge relief of us, right? Because now, me and Carlos, we just logged into our machine and we started the web server, and the traffic came back, right? But that's even though we found a mitigation, that is also unsustainable, because what we had were load balancing. So we were adding and removing instances, or when they were crashing as time was went, and whenever a new instance was added, right, it crashed. So we didn't want to say to the intern, yeah, you have to stay up tonight and start web services though. So we wanted to find a better mitigation than this. Right? This was a mitigation to remove the extreme criticality of it, because now people from outside thinks it works, but we knew this is not sustainable. So even though we found mitigation, we didn't really close it off, because it's not going to work. But it was still a huge relief, right? So then me and Carlos, right, we discuss.
So I have a question. At this point, the severity has gone down, but are you still treating it as an incident and documenting?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's unsustainable, this mitigation. Yes, it's people from outside thinks it's done, but we think, but if we leave this up, it's just going to crash again, right? It's not going to work. And the only way to make it work is we have some intern, sitting and starting web servers, and that sucks. Let's not do that. Right? So we want to find a better mitigation. So, but still, huge relief that we found something, that the traffic is flowing. So because then we had the hours instead of seconds. Right. So then we talked, okay, can we do something else, right? Then we kind of did what was alluded to here in the chat, that we looked back in the history of this service, and we saw that a few weeks earlier we switched from Oracle JDK to Open JDK, and that worked perfectly. But we was like, we have no idea what's going on. Let's switch back to Oracle JDK and see what's going on, how the system reacts to that. And to our big surprise, it worked. When we ran Oracle JDK, the cluster started, it went green, everything worked, the traffic flew. So at this point, what do we do then, do you think?
Well, I don't know how critical it is that you run Open JDK over Oracle JDK, but again,
so
what's that?
We removed it for cost reasons. Oracle JDK is very expensive.
Okay, so again, the severity dropped because now you don't have an intern who needs to stay overnight, and again, the time you have just grew. But I'm unclear about whether this incident's over because you have a more sustainable solution, or whether it's not over because you don't have the solution that you want in the end, that it's not final. So my guess is that it would switch to this side, and then the getting to this identify improvements would be on a much slower normal working day scale, would be getting that JDK switched over in a way that works.
Yes. So are you saying we put the incident into mitigated or pending fixes side effect?
Yeah.
But we still consider it open, right? We still want that fix, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, and that is what we go.
But we are starting to switch into this side of the
yes.
Yeah, the aftermath.
Yeah. So at this point, I felt, and Carlos felt, now this we can live with, right? We are in a stable position. We don't like, and we have to switch away from this Oracle JDK. We knew that. We switched from that for a reason. So what we were saying at that time, right, is it's mitigated. I immediately called an incident review next day, where we sit down and we talk about this issue. Everybody agreed this doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But it is mitigated. It seems to be working, but we should understand this, because if you don't understand it, it can just happen to Oracle JDK tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And then so we need to come to an understanding here that we felt that was important, because it's if this happens again, we lose traffic, and that sucks, right? It's too we can't really live with that. So, and maybe next time we don't have a good recovery either. You know, this time we were lucky, kind of. So yeah, we have to do something about it. So, but the thing is here, now it's mitigated. So we said here, okay, let's create some tickets to find out. And Carlos was the main person investigating this. He's very experienced with Linux. He's very, senior guy. He knows a lot about this stuff. So he took on that. But the thing is, it happens during normal work hours. It's not, he was working day and night with this. It's not necessary, because it's running. But we want an answer as soon as possible. So Carlos has a bunch of tickets created for him. He's working on a problem. He's troubleshooting. It turns out it's actually quite complicated. And we learned 3 important things, because eventually Carlos figured it out and we switched back to OpenJDK. So 3 important things. We thought we had immutable infrastructures. Apparently we didn't. So by immutable infrastructure, it meant we didn't use Kubernetes. So obviously if you use Kubernetes, this would never happen, right? You know, that technology is flawless. So, but what we did, we want to make sure that each node that we deploy is identical to each node. There shouldn't be any differences. There's the configuration issue, right? So what happened in our system was that we started the virtual machine. We installed all the software on the virtual machine, and then we took a snapshot of the virtual machine. And whenever we started a new instance of the node, we started from the same snapshot. And this same snapshot that worked the day before suddenly stopped working. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why we were so confused, because it's identical. But it turns out that Amazon has a special service that during startup looks for critical security fixes, I believe, in your dependencies. And it found one of them in OpenJDK. And very nicely, it said, oh, you have a critical vulnerability here. Let me install a fixed version for you. And I'm going to delete the old version. And this suddenly explains everything. Because what happened was our web server started on the old version. But at some point, they deleted the old version, and we needed some more files. And then the entire web service crashed. But then when we logged in a few minutes later on the same service, the new Java JDK was installed. And when we started the web service, it just worked.
Then it worked. Okay.
So super simple when it was explained, but we were so confused. So this was a huge learning. Immutable infrastructure? Not really. So, because this was the secret one, right? Another thing we learned was that our health check sucked. So a health check was here, because what happens when we deploy a new cluster is the load balancer check the health checks to see. So I don't know how much, if I should continue here, but tell me if I should stop. But the load balancer check the health check, and if it goes red, it would never go live, and we would never go into this critical situation. Because it would go red. But what happened was that health check reported green, even though it was bad. So if we have the proper fix of the health check, this would never have happened. Because then the new cluster would just go red. I would go, whoa, what happened? But we wouldn't lose traffic, right? I would still be confused, but it would never be critical. And then the third thing we learned, also improvement, was that we can make our startup script a little bit more robust. Make a loop. Start web server, sleep 1 second, start web server, start web server. And this would never be noticed. So, 3 improvements to our system. So we made sure that we start the web server after all dependencies have been installed. We fixed the health check, and we fixed the startup process, and made everything much more robust that way. And we would never do that without the incident.
So the incident, in a way, it was a gift.
Yeah, if you have a proper process to capture the knowledge.
Yeah. We have Spheric says load balancer probe, just pinging the server IP, but not the service. Port the health check probe, so it would be perceived as being green when the issue is really red.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's up.
Interesting.
So does this make sense to you? Or am I just rambling on?
Oh, it makes perfect sense to me, and I really enjoyed having the real world experience giving me context, because it's a little more gray than what I pictured, or like the fact that there still was a big problem, but the fact that it was mitigated meant it moved into this phase, or at what point it moves into this different phase, the different phases. Yeah. I want to, since this was up top, I'm going to do a recap of the live incident document, but probably not the rest of it, since we did that great recap. And also, if there are any questions now, we're probably wrapping soon, so bring the questions or comments. The live incident document is the centerpiece of this incident management process. And it's a real-time document that is created and maintained by the incident commander, although everyone is encouraged to contribute to it. It should ideally be a blameless document too, so people put their names in it and they do not receive any blame if things don't go wrong. Their names are there, so if you need more information from them later, they're available.
Yep.
So it's a real-time document that's collaborative. It's a single source of truth, and it's a live update of what's going on. So with this in place, it avoids anyone having to repeat updates to many stakeholders, which takes time away from actually solving the problem.
Yes.
It also lays the groundwork for incident review. So when it's all over and you're out of crisis mode and you're trying to figure out what went wrong and what improvements can happen, you have this source of this document as the groundwork for that. And then it also shows your thought process in the model. So if you do end up making a poor decision, you have documented why it seems like a good decision in the moment, which is going to be helpful for the future.
And in a blame-free environment, nobody will blame you anyway, right? But you might blame yourself. You might think, I'm an awful human being for making this stupid mistake.
Yeah.
But at that time, you didn't know. Or maybe you were multiple people doing that. So it feels a little bit better.
Yeah. So this was amazing. I learned so much, and I enjoyed learning from your real life experiences and having a better sense of what can and does go wrong in a real system.
Yeah, I sometimes think it can go more wrong than can go right. That seems to be right.
It's true. There's so many ways.
But it's really great to come here and talk about this. I obviously care about this subject. I think most people can tell that. But
yes.
And I also think this idea of you having that we did it more interactive, this story, I think it actually, I don't know what you thought, but I thought it turned out quite interesting, this thing.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
I asked you hard questions. Maybe it felt awkward, but I think it was actually quite a good way to, think a little bit. What do we do next? Right.
Uh-huh. So, and it wasn't awkward for me at all. I'm always willing to try my best.
Throw yourself into the middle of, throw you in the water and see if you swim,
Oh no. Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready. Spheric says now the trauma is when the same issue arises and the previous incident PTSARs are not referenced. So the pain of deja vu comes to mind. Oh, yeah. How do you bring in, if it's already happened, how is that represented in the incident management process to search for past incident catalog to see if there's something to reference?
We had an on-call procedure, and in the on-call process, we had on-call documentation, but we also had available all incidents, and we had a few of them, documents that described, and it was kind of like, it was also obvious, you just did it, but then you thought, boy, it sounds weird, and then you checked in hope, like, I hope I find something similar. So
it's almost part of the finding a solution would be to look at past problems.
An experience checks that often.
Nick, the first one, thinks this interactive way of going through an incident might be a good way to teach someone in a safe environment instead of making them learn trial by fire.
Actually, if I bring up, that is how I was trained the first time. So what happened was that the smart CIO guy, he came in and said, okay, I am the incident role game master, right?
Yeah.
Mårten, right? You see a huge load on one of your servers. What do you do? Okay. I start the incident process. Okay, how do you do it? And he went through, and I asked, I read the logs. Do I see something? No, you don't see anything. Oh, damn! And then but I bring in Carlos as my helper. So that was a way we did role play the entire scenario to sort of try it out as this was happening. And I felt that was quite good, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another way to learn it is that then we did that, but the second way we did it to really get into was we got a simple incident that wasn't very complex. They were threatening. I thought this is a good trading incident because super critical. But let's follow the process and to see if it helps. So when it really happens, it just comes automatically. So
yeah, like a simple one that's real life is a good training opportunity. The next step up probably from a safe one that is not real. That's PTSARs are there to be used in reference. So the incident having search tags seems important. So that's a great point in terms of this process. And then we have a lovely comment from Lisa, applies to many situations. I agree. I'll probably be using this in other parts of my life. Great talk and good stuff. Yay. Do you have any last words? Do you want to, let's dance out the end of the episode. Will you dance with me, Mårten? A little bit? Just a little. Yeah. We're going to play my brother's song again.
I'm not sure. Any last words? I regret nothing. No, but I want to point out that people might think this is not for me. This is just for big companies, but I run this as a small company, right? We are 20 people, something like that, not very big. And it's also doable in Schibsted with several thousand people, right? I think this process is very scalable into different things. And I don't think of myself as a very stress-resistant person. I think I'm much more, I get too sucked into a problem. I feel I'm more compassionate about the customer these days. So I feel really bad for them when we have an issue, right? This process here has helped me guide through some really nasty incidents involving a lot of teams and high stakes. And it never felt awful. It felt stressful, but it never really felt, I never really felt it alone or really, really awful.
Not alone and not really out of control because you have
not super stress, just stress.
And then again, the documenting your thought process in the moment helps you feel better about yourself when it's over too. So I'm sure that helps avoid the trauma. We have another. Great. Ficeric says great talk. Another great talk. Thanks both, and thanks Ficeric and Nick, the first one, and really everyone, but especially you two for sharing your own incident experiences and being so active in the chat. It is great. And are you ready to dance out the exit? as ready as you'll ever be. Bye, everyone. This is super fun. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Mårten. You got it. Heck yeah.
You remember him?